Welcome to DS Trucks on an early morning drive in my wife's 27 EcoBoost. And in today's video, I want to talk about why I went out of business and should I try again. So, talking about failing in business and going out and losing everything and quitting. Not my business that I'm in right now, but the one that I was in before this one. So, before doing lawns or anything like that, before even starting up at Ford, I used to be a mobile mechanic on the side. I tried to sort of go a little bit more full time when I was young. I'm talking 19, 20 years old, trying to work on cars out of my trunk of my car. I had a 92 Infiniti. I would take it out with tools in the trunk, and I would, I didn't go too crazy, but I would go to people's houses and kind of work on their cars. And then I would, and then I didn't never feel like I could make it. And so I would work a job, and then I would kind of still do that on the side. But I had a clientele. After a while, I got a job in a construction company, and then I got myself a little bit of clientele. And I would go to their houses, they would call me up, and word of mouth would spread. And I had a clientele where I would go around and kind of work on their junk. Most of it was junk cars, nothing fancy, nothing nice or new or anything. But that was my thing. And for the longest time, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a mechanic so bad. When I was 16, 17, 18, I wanted to be a mechanic. I went and got all certified through the state and would apply for jobs that didn't work. So I went to college. I got some brake certificate, or I took some brake classes, some engine building classes, some transmission classes, and it was hard. I would go to school and I would study and go to school and work full time, and it was tough. It was a time where I used to be so exhausted that I would fall asleep in the car, nodding out everywhere because I was working, and then going to night classes. And I just wanted to be a mechanic so bad. And it got to the point where I would apply for these jobs, these whatever dealerships, mechanic shop, like your Midas, and it just wouldn't work. Like I never got hired. And I would just take a day and go and apply at every dealership in the town, and I would go on interviews, and they look at my application, and you're not qualified. You're not qualified. And granted too, it was 2008, 2009. There was some kind of a economic crisis. I don't know if what that had to do with it, but I think at the end of the day, the reason I couldn't find a job is because I didn't know how to find a job. I would dress up in a nice outfit. I would wear, your button-down shirt, your nice pants, and I couldn't listen. Looking like that, I was not qualified to change oil. Not that I couldn't change oil, but when I would go to these oil change places looking for a job, it got so bad I just wanted anything, $10 an hour, whatever. I just wanted to work on cars. I don't even care if it's just changing oil. But I would go go to like Uncle Ed's oil change, and they would be scared when I got there because they think I'm inspecting the place. They'd be like, "Is everything okay?" Like I'm wearing khakis and a button up. They think I'm like the superintendent showing up to. They're like, "Oh, you want a job here, looking like that?" And they wouldn't hire me. Nobody would hire me. So that's why I ended up being just a mobile mechanic on my own. And I used to go, and sometimes it went good. Most of the time it went good. But I do remember like struggling, messing up people's cars. I messed up this guy's car. He had a Camaro. He had a 98 Camaro, and I'd never done an intake on that car before, and he needed an intake done. And it's got this little plastic elbow, and the plastic elbow was not installed with a new. You'd have to put a new one on, and I tried to make the old one work, and it was crumbling. The plastic was crumbling, and I just put a bunch of RTV on it and tried to send it, and that thing leaked everywhere. And I never really the guy still gave me $100, but I told him like, dude, this. He had like all these daughters that were like the same age as me, and they were all like hovering around me while I'm working on the car, and I'm like, I need to focus on this car. Like, get your little girls in the house. Like, But I'm out there, I'm like wrenching, looking on the side. They're all young, trying to show me a little monkey. They're just like fascinated that this kid's working on the car. But here I am, meanwhile, I'm messing this guy's car up. But, after getting through some of those hard times, I got better, and I got better, and I got, to the point where I could have a clientele, but it was tough. What I felt at the time, I got into Ford, and I started getting money. Once I got into Ford, I dropped out of school. School to me seemed like a joke once I got into Ford. So I got a little money from Ford. I was making like $15 an hour, steady money. Yeah, you can make more when you get a couple $100 job, whatever. I got good at those intakes, those 3,800 intakes that was on that Camaro. Did tons of those, tons of 3,800 GM work, suspension work, whatever, struts, shocks, brakes, brake lines. That was a huge one. I could do all brake lines. I could fix messes. You come in and you bring me a car with absolutely jacked up brake lines all across the board, and I would straighten things out, run all new lines, whatever. But what was happening is, the way I felt at the time working at Ford is, I felt like I was at two different extremes. You go into Ford, at the time, I would have so much anxiety being on the line. I would have so much anxiety working on the line. And then you get off the line, and then you go and do something so different. Like fixing a car and working on the line is so much difference for the brain, that I felt like I was losing my mind working on the line. And then when I would work on cars, it didn't feel like I was good enough, because I spent so much time on the line. Like when you're working on cars, you almost want to be like thinking about that all the time, doing that all the time, and then you get to the assembly line and you just turn everything off for 40 hours a week. And then on the weekends, you're doing an engine job. You're doing an engine swap, putting the engine in, whatever. That engine swap's going to stimulate you in such a different way that at the time it felt like I was at such different extremes in my life that something had to give. Like this whole mechanic thing, or Ford, like I'm going to so many, like I'm challenging myself in such a different way doing the mechanic work, that I didn't feel effective almost. And also on top of that, I wasn't making the money that I wanted to make. So eventually I got to the point where I had a pickup truck, a nice Sierra, whatever. It was a Sierra, kind of loaded real nice with all the features and bells and whistles. It was older. That was 2004. So it was like 10 years old when I had it. It's like 2014 at this point. I had a nice Sierra, whatever. And I didn't have good business sense. Why did this business go under? I didn't have a good business sense. I didn't know what I was doing, and I didn't know that I didn't know what I was doing. I just felt like this industry wasn't a good industry because I wasn't doing well. The mobile mechanic is not a good thing, because all I'm doing is working on junk. All I'm doing is working on junky cars, and I'm not making the money that I want to make. I don't have the clientele that I want to have. I have all old busted cars that my clients have, and I'm just not doing what I want to do, So after a while of that, what I would do wrong is I would drive so far to work on a car. I remember one time I drove like 50 minutes to look at a guy's starter. I did a starter like 50 minutes away, a starter. And I didn't charge him for that time, like for that drive, because I just wanted to work on cars so bad. This guy calls me with a starter. I'm like, and I drive all the way out there. I do the starter. I come all the way back, and I didn't make no money. I spent money. I spent money doing the guy's starter for him for so cheap. And I didn't understand, how do I make this work? So I felt like instead of working on the issues that I had, I felt like the business wasn't right. So, I just kind of stopped and I just switched over to lawns because I felt like lawns were so steady, reliable. You could always do them. It's steady revenue, whatever. And I just weighed the options, and I just jumped into lawns. I had zero experience, and slowly, over a couple weeks, I kind of just made the shift, and I just stopped doing the mobile mechanic stuff. And that was it. It was all pretty much done after that point, and I just stayed with lawns. Now, is lawns better? No, lawns aren't really better or worse. That business isn't better than this business or whatever, vice versa. It's just the lawn care had a community online on YouTube that was starting to blossom, and the information was available to me to learn, whereas the mobile mechanic information wasn't there. Like, there wasn't that community, there wasn't that support network. I listened to a lot of guys on YouTube when it came to lawns. There was like Lawn Care Millionaire and different people that really helped me get into lawns that didn't exist with the mobile mechanic. I think now there's mechanics that are online that kind of could, but they're not talking like business. Like the lawn care thing online there's tons of business guys online that talk about lawn care, but I pretty much went under. I didn't really think of it that way at the time, but now that I think about it, I pretty much gave in and went under. I failed. The business failed, even though it wasn't really a business. Like, it's not like how my lawn business is a business. It's a registered business. It was just kind of me on the side doing whatever. It is what it is. But why do businesses fail? Because you just get tired, you get exhausted, you don't want to do it no more. And that's kind of what happened with mobile mechanic. But there's times where I just kind of feel like I want to do that again. Not that I have time or energy, whatever, but I really was forged in a crucible almost in order to do lawns. The way that I had to do lawn, or the way that I learned how to work on cars, I was forged in a crucible. I had to fix cars with $0 to my name. Meaning, I would go to the junkyard and get my parts because I didn't have money for brand new parts. So I would go to the junkyard and have to get maybe 3 or 4 struts, maybe 3 or 4 starters, maybe 4 alternators, just so that the car could run. I had a 92 LeBaron. My first car was a 1992 Chrysler LeBaron. My brother had it, and he jacked that car up before I got it. He jacked that car up. The frame, it was a 92 Chrysler LeBaron, and it had a K-frame underneath. It was an old K car. And the K-frame was pretty much this frame, that subframe that goes underneath the vehicle, and it kind of cradles the engine and holds the front struts. It's a super cheap design that was super easy for Chrysler to mass produce. Well, this K-frame, he went off something. He jumped the car off something, or hit something, and he cracked this K-frame. And the front steering was so messed up because the strut was no longer in the right position. It had no positive caster for the front steering knuckle for one of the wheels. So one wheel was good, and then the other wheel would like rub when you turn because it wasn't in the right spot no more. It was like pushed back. So the car looked pretty much normal, but the wheel was pushed back. Like the left wheel, it was definitely the left wheel that was pushed back, and you could see that it was rubbing the metal. So it would drive all crooked, and he didn't care. He just kept driving it. But when I got it, it was like, man, I'm driving around with a crooked car. Like, the car's driving crooked. So I'm looking underneath like, what's wrong? And at this time, I had zero experience working on cars. I'm looking underneath the car like, what's wrong? What's going on? And It was the K-frame. So what I did is I had to do the research online to figure out what vehicles had the K-frames under them and what years. And I would have to go to the junkyard and by myself remove the K-frames. And I remember it took me like 2 weeks because the K-frames on those cars would rot into the, like, they weren't ever made to really come out again. So when you try to take it off, the cage nut that holds it was hidden in a certain way, and you needed all these extensions or whatever to get it off. You had to take the rack pinion off and all this. So I would go in there and just try to get one, and they wouldn't come off of the cars because the cage nuts would strip out and they were just rotted in the cars for 20 years. So that's how I was forged, guys, from just grinding like a whole day in the junkyard trying to get one part and not getting that part. You know, that's where I came from. And it's like, I do have that skill. It's kind of latent right now, but it can be reactivated. You know, as you guys saw with old Green, I've done work on that car, and it was a struggle, but it was coming back to me, you know, slowly coming back to me. But at the end of the day, you know, when the times are tough, I could do a little bit of that stuff like I used to back in the day. You know, it's one of those weird things. I remember that old Chrysler LeBaron. I remember turning my first bolt ever. I remember being so poor or so bad at mechanic work that I didn't know how to actually turn a bolt to get it loose. And I remember the first time figuring out looking online how to loosen a bolt and turning my first bolt and getting it loose and busting my knuckles. You know, it's one of those things, guys. But anyway, that's it for the video, guys. Why my business went under. Should I reignite things? But that's it for the video. Thank you for watching DS Trucks, where we run nothing but the best. Over and out, guys. See you in the next one.